We're Ariel.
And Michelle, and we're the
Board
Board Game Tutors.
Today, we're going to be doing just the basics, part 1, for the board game Agricola, All Creatures, Big and Small. Now, the main difference that you need to know about the fact that that subtitle is important is because there is a board game just called Agricola, which can have multiple players in it. But in Agricola, All Creatures, Big and Small, it's basically the two-player version of Agricola. So let's go ahead and get started with part 1 for All Creatures, Big and Small.
All right. So here you can see everything that's in the game, and we're going to talk about all that in detail in a moment. But first, we just want to go over the objective of the game. So your goal is to get the most points over the 8 rounds during which the game takes place. So you want to have the most points by the end of the 8 rounds. And the way you get points is pretty simple. You're going to get 1 point for each of these animals, which you can see here, the different kinds of animals. You get 1 point for each animal that you have. And when you get an animal, it's going to go in your area. We'll talk about that more later. And then you also get bonus points based on the number of each animal that you have. So basically, the more animals of each type you have, the better. And we'll go over the details of that later as well. And then you also get points for buildings that you have. So here you can see the buildings that you'll be able to purchase during the game.
So for example, this building, a stall, is worth 1 point. This half-timbered house is worth 5 points. And this shelter is worth 0 points, just as a few examples.
All right. So at the end of the game, you'll be adding up all your points, and you'll see who has the most points.
Okay.
So now I'm just going to show you some of the components. Up here you can see these brown tokens represent wood. And there's also that green rectangular token, which represents 4 wood. I don't know if you can see that, but it has the number 4 and the symbol for wood. So that's just if you run out of tokens, you can get a little bit more using that token.
Yeah, it basically stands in for 4 wood.
And then those black pieces are called stone. They're a bit hard to see because we have a black table here. And then there's also a token that represents 4 stone, just to help you have a few more if you don't have enough pieces in the game. And then those white ones are called reed. And again, there's a token for an extra 4 reed if you need that. Here we have the different kinds of animals. So we have horses, sheep, pigs, and cows. And each of them has a token or more than 1 token, just in case you need to have more than the actual number of pieces that are here in the game. Okay, so those are the animals that you can acquire, and those up there were some of the building materials that you'll be using over the course of the game.
Okay. Now, something else that I wanted to briefly go over is the fact that, so as you can see, if we do a little wide shot here, here's the main board where basically the 2 players who are playing the game, they share all the different options of what they can do on the main board. And then, as you can see, Michelle has her personal board over here with her personal assets in terms of what she can use. And I have my personal board with my personal assets. So basically, the majority of interaction in this game comes from basically taking different actions, different resources and animals from this main board and putting them onto your player board or your player area for resources specifically. And so basically what you're going to be doing is basically you can take one action and then the other player can't take that same action because usually it's just 1 space for each action. And so basically, you're going to be taking animals and resources from the main board, bringing them to your player area, and constructing buildings, building areas for your animals to stay inside of, etc. So this is your personal area. You determine specifically what you do in your personal area, and then the main area, that's where both players can do whatever they want.
So you sort of compete for resources in the main board, and then in your personal board, your opponent won't be able to do anything to mess with what you've actually already put in your game board area.
So basically, on your personal storage area, it's basically an issue of figuring out where am I going to put things, how can I best figure out where to put my animals so they have enough space, etc. Over here, this is the first player marker. It tells you who starts off each round of the game. So one side has a woman on it, the other side has a man on it. And pretty much at the beginning of the game, you'll just determine, using whatever method you want, to determine who goes first in the game, each round of the game. And that can be exchanged over the course of the game. So that's that. In your personal player area, there's also two important things that you start off with at the beginning of the game. You have 9 here. These are called borders, and as you can see, there are also borders over here. So these stand in to represent fences and walls when you construct them during the course of the game. Obviously, you're going to need walls to pen in your creatures and give them appropriate spaces so they can roam around and whatnot. So these are the 9 that you only have access to. Your opponent does not have access to these 9. They can get these over here, but they cannot access your 9 borders. And also, the thing that makes this a worker placement game, if you've never heard of that before, is your 3 workers. So these are basically placeholders. So they don't look like workers, they just look like discs. But you will take these workers, put them on the board on any given action space on the board, and you will take that action. So it's essentially like sending a worker to go do that action. Now you can collect resources, do the action that's on that space, or collect animals. So each of us has 3. I have 3 red, and Michelle over there on her board, she has 3 blue people.
So every round you'll be setting these out to do work for you and then taking them back when the round ends.
So as you can see, you can only choose to do 3 actions every round. So you have to choose wisely in terms of what are you trying to accomplish overall. These are the only 3 things that you can do to achieve your overall goals. So that's what makes this game a worker placement game. You take your little person, or whatever this thing is, and you choose one action, then your opponent chooses one action, then you choose your next action, they choose their action, etc. So that's what makes this a worker placement game. You get your worker, you put it on the board, you do the action.
All right.
All right. And now, for the last few things that we haven't yet covered on the board, over here, these are called expansion tiles. As you can see, it's one column, and you can add these to your farm and basically give yourself some more space to stick in some more animals. Over here, we briefly mentioned this before, these are all of the buildings in the game. Over here is a stack of 4 stalls, so both players have access to building these buildings, and there's 4 copies of this stall. And then over here, we have the 4 special buildings. So these are the open stables, the shelter, the half-timbered house, and the storage building. So there's only 1 copy of each of these buildings. Once one person has built one of these tiles, they'll take that tile, put it onto their board wherever they want to put it, and then there will be no more copies. Once I have taken this half-timbered house, Michelle no longer has the ability to build a half-timbered house. And these will give you points, respectively, given their special powers and their different numbers on them, like we mentioned earlier. And also, the last 2 components in the game are, obviously, the main board, which I briefly went over already, and then we have feeding troughs. I'm not going to go into exactly what they do. It gets a little complicated depending upon the situation that you use them in, but feeding troughs, they help feed more animals in a given area on your farm. And over here, we have 8 borders. So like I said, they stand in for fences and or walls. But basically, so these mark the 8 rounds of the game. So after 1 round passes in the game of Agricola, all creatures big and small, you will take 1 fence, 1 border, and you'll put it on the border, on the board, main board. And then now there are 7. Well, not 7, but in a normal game there would be 1 there already. And then you would add 1. So now you could see there are 6 rounds remaining. So that's one way to keep track of where you are in a game of Agricola, all creatures big and small. So that is that. And so those were all the basic things that you need to know about the game, Agricola, all creatures big and small. We're going to go over specifically in the future all the different actions that you can do on the main board and how that will affect your personal board. And also, as you can see here, this is the basic setup of a game of Agricola, all creatures big and small. So we'll specifically go over how you set this up, but this is how the game will look when you first start a game. So if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave us a message. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content of this video. And yeah, please subscribe to our channel, The Board Game Tutors, if you would like regular updates from us regarding all the different content that we're going to be posting. And yeah, we appreciate all of your feedback.
All right, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.